Ultimate Luna has arrived in the first Descendant. She is now incredibly strong, dealing massive amounts of damage and letting you spam your abilities without worrying about losing MP. So without wasting any more time, let's get into the build. So for this build, it's basically just dealing a massive amounts of damage to enemies and getting your abilities as fast as possible and getting unlimited amounts of MP. But in order for you to do that, you're going to want to use this Transcendent module that just came out called Battlefield Concert. It would modify your unique weapon to inflict debuffs on enemies. When using an enhanced skill, it will deal damage to that enemy and temporarily stops note usage. So first, on your first ability, it is now called Concert Opening. Once you activate this ability, you're going to be on this platform, and once you run out of MP, you're going to get out of this platform. But while you are mounted on this unique weapon and you were to activate your notes or your skills, you're going to be filling up your Inspiration Gauge. And what they mean about the Inspiration Gauge is that bar underneath your MP bar. And in order for you to accumulate the Inspiration Gauge, you can either use your abilities as you're hitting the note or your weapon. But mainly we're going to be using our weapon to hit those notes to give us that Inspiration Gauge. But if you do plan on using your skill and accidentally miss your note, that ability will go into cooldown, but don't worry, you're going to be getting it back if it's on cooldown, because we have plenty enough duration for our abilities. So no matter what you do, if you were to fail with these abilities, you're going to be getting it back very fast. Also too, if you were to fire your unique weapon and accidentally missed the note, you will lose MP. But that doesn't really matter for this build because we're going to find a way to give us unlimited MP extremely fast. So what you're going to want to do is activate your first ability, but here's the kicker. You cannot use your second, third, or fourth ability no matter what you're doing, as long as you activate your first ability. So I activated my first ability, and as we can see here, instead of the notes being in the middle of the screen, it is now going to be on the left and right side of the screen, and they're appearing extremely fast. Don't worry, it's easy to activate. You don't really have to hit an enemy to get your Inspiration Gauge, so you're going to want to tap the trigger with your shooting button, and as you're doing that, you're going to accumulate the Inspiration Gauge. And as what you see here, we're going to be getting it very slowly, but don't worry, we're going to be using a module that would help us get this extremely fast. So once your Inspiration Gauge is filled up, you can activate any of the three abilities, your second, your third, or your fourth. As what you're seeing there, they're flickering pink, so that's letting you know you can either activate any of those three. But first, let me show you what the second ability does. It is called Passionate Stage. Once you activate this ability, it will grant yourself a Passionate Stage. When attacking enemies with this debuff, it will increase your skill power proportionally to the number of debuffs that are on the enemy. And also too, while Passionate State is activated, enemies will be inflicted with Earworm. This will reduce the enemy's movement speed by 50%. You can tell if the enemy has that debuff is when you activate your second ability and you see the buff on the left side and you just shoot the enemy and you'll see that debuff right there on the top left. When using an enhanced skill, it will grant Fever Time to yourself and it will deal damage in front of you, and it would also inflict dopamine addiction on enemies. This will give you the ability to stun enemies. So in order for you to activate Fever Time, you're going to want to fill up your Inspiration Gauge on the bottom of your MP bar. So that's what I'm going to be doing right now. So now that I have it full, I'm going to activate my second ability and be sure to hit the note. Once you do, you can be able to spam your ability or your primary unique weapon extremely fast, and as what you see the enemy, he is getting stunned while I have Fever Time on. So if you really care about stunning enemies and decreasing their movement speed and getting your skill critical hit rate up by 30%, be sure to use this ability. For your third ability called Intense Stage, this will grant you the buff called Intense Stage to yourself, and this will increase your explosion range and will inflict the debuffs of your skills on enemies within range. And when attacking an enemy with this Intense Stage buff while it's active, it will inflict this debuff called All Eyes on Me. This will make your enemy's defenses decrease by 10%. And for the Intense Stage, that's the buff you're going to be getting for yourself, it will increase your range. And when they mean by using an enhanced skill, here's what you need to do in order for you to activate that. So as you're hitting notes with your skills or with your unique weapon, there is a chance for you to generate an Inspiration Gauge. Once that reaches maximum, you can use your enhanced skills. When using your enhanced skills, it will consume all Inspiration Gauge. So what you saw there before, as I activated all of the Inspiration Gauge, I was dancing like crazy and getting a bunch of buffs and debuffs towards enemies. So when it comes to activating your Inspiration Gauge, you would have a 40% chance to activate at least one when getting a successful hit. That would be your first ability, and using your skills to activate the notes, it would give you a 30% chance to activate an Inspiration Gauge. So back to the third ability. Once you activate Fever Time, again, is when you have all of your Inspiration Gauge activated, and casting this this ability, it will grant that buff to yourself and also will inflict this debuff to enemies called Algorithm Domination. This will give you the ability to increase your damage up to 12%. So for this ability, if you really want to maximize your range and lowering the enemy's defenses and increasing your damage to them, be sure to use this ability. And when it comes to activating this ability, it's the same thing for the first ability. And the fourth and final ability is called Fan Service. Once you activate this buff, it will grant you fan service to yourself. When attacking enemies with this buff, it will increase the number of auto targets, but reduces your skill power slightly. So you're going to be hitting more targets, but you're losing a little bit of skill power. And you're only going to be losing 8% of your skill power, but you're going to be getting the ability to hit 3 more targets. It's going to auto target. And while you have this buff activated, Fan Service, and you were to inflict damage to that enemy, they're going to get a debuff called Fan Club Member. This will make the enemy deal less damage to you. And lastly, once you have Fever Time activated, you're going to be inflicting this debuff called the Dark Luna Squad. So this will make your enemies deal 30% less damage to you. So for this ability, if you really struggle in endgame content and want your enemies to deal less damage to you, be sure to activate the fourth ability. But in my personal opinion, when it comes to optimizing your damage, I recommend either going for your third ability to increasing your damage onto enemies, or you can go for the Passionate State, which will increase your skill critical hit rate and also stun your enemies and make them move slower. All right, if you really want to copy the modules right now, you can do so right now, but I do want to let you guys know about 2 modules. The first one I went with is called Potent Collector. When defeating an enemy, it would instantly recover 12.2% of your custom resource at a 17% chance. Here's what that means. So as you're playing the game, you're going to be activating your inspiration gauge with either shooting your weapon or activating your abilities. So you're going to be getting kills with your unique weapon. So as you're doing that, you're going to be getting more stacks of inspiration gauge. So I'm just going to be keep spamming this just to hopefully I can be able to get more inspiration gauge from these, activating my buffs, getting these kills. And by killing 10 enemies, I got all of my inspiration gauge like that very quickly. So that would give us the ability to activate any of our 3 abilities, our second, third, or fourth. Once we activate that, we're going to be getting unlimited MP and those additional benefits for that ability you pressed. And the second module I want to discuss is this one called Maximize Duration. I did put this to give me plenty of time for my buffs and most importantly, Fever Time, because that will give you unlimited MP. But if you don't really want to use this because of the minus skill power, you could change this to either like Strong Mentality for skill cost. All right, so the gameplay loop for this build for Ultimate Luna is basically this. You're going to want to activate your second, third, and fourth, and then you're going to want to use your unique weapon to spam to get as much kills as possible to generate that inspiration gauge. Once it's activated, activate any of your abilities that you feel comfortable with. But before you do, be sure to pay attention to that black buff that you see on the left side of the screen. If that runs out, you can no longer use that inspiration gauge because it will deplete. So I'm going to activate my second ability that will give me the ability to spam my 1. And as I am spamming it, you can activate your first and your third or your fourth ability because you have unlimited MP to refresh the timer. Keep spamming and spamming and rinse and repeat. That's basically what you got to do. All right, let's head to the reactor. The reactor I am using for this build is the Materialized Mechanics Reactor. Be sure to go for a tech non-attribute reactor and go for skill critical hit rate and skill critical hit damage. And for the external components, I went with the Enlightened Mage Auxiliary Power Set. And if you have 2 sets of these, it will increase your skill power by 6%. And if you have all 4 sets, your firearm attack will deal 12% less damage, but this is an ability build, so that doesn't really matter. And secondly, when using a non-attribute skill, it will grant 1 stack of truth up to 3 stacks. It will last up to 15 seconds, and this will give you an 84% increase in your non-attribute skill power for 15 seconds. So your first ability, your second ability, your third and fourth ability will activate truth, and you would get these benefits. So for the auxiliary power, be sure to go for max HP and go for MP out of combat. For your sensor, go for max MP and max MP in combat. For your memory, go for MP recovery modifier and defense. And lastly, for your processor, you can choose anything you like, but I went with ESIF display time and item acquisition distance increase modifier. What's really cool about this build is that you don't really have to spike into any of the weapons in the game because we are using a unique weapon. And if you didn't know, when you use a unique weapon, the benefits from your weapons will not transfer to your Descendant. So for example, if I am using this weapon called the Secret Garden, and if I were to activate any of my tech skills in which Ultimate Luna has because of the Transcendent module, you would get pest control. So I have my Secret Garden activated right here. I'm going to activate my first ability, and by me using my abilities, I will not get a single pest control because all of my abilities are tech and none of them will show because I have that unique weapon, which is my one. So you can freely choose any weapon you like, but I just went with Secret Garden because I have it maxed out. And if you want to copy the mods, you can freely do so. But I do want to let you guys know that the only thing that will activate is this module called Brisk Walk, which will increase your movement speed. There's probably other modules that do the same thing. For the Inversion Reinforcements, there's 2 out of the 3 you should be able to go for. The first one is this one called Arche Circulation Tactic. On hitting an enemy with a skill, it will grant Arche Circulation Tactic. This will decrease your skill cooldown by 24% for 10 seconds. That's if like you're missing all of your notes for your abilities, and that will go into cooldown and it will just decrease your cooldown. But the main reinforcement you're going to want to go for is this one called Selective Neurostimulation. This one just grants you MP over time every 45 seconds. So for the third reinforcement, I changed it. I did have it on this one, but I swapped it to this one called Shield Particle Reconfiguration. When hitting an enemy, it will grant this buff, and it will grant you plus 10 defense and plus 2.5% max shield. And basically, it just gives you more survivability. But mainly, you're going to want to go for this one and this one. All right, for your Arche Tuning, here's what I put. I mainly spiked into skill power, skill duration, skill critical hit rate, and skill critical hit damage. And for this socket, I went with the Arche Maximization. So basically, whenever I deal debuffs to enemies, in which case we are for any of our abilities, is going to increase our skill critical hit rate. And there's going to be 3 stacks of these. So no matter what you're doing, you're going to be activating this. So once you have 3 stacks of these, it's going to give you 34.5% skill critical hit rate for 10 seconds. If you want to copy the Arche Tuning, feel free to do so. But if you want to change it up, go for it. You don't really have to use what I'm using. This one's kind of like an honorable mention. If you do have the new dog that just came out, I do recommend going for the Husky dog because it would automatically give you MP recovery up to 16% because I have it maxed out. But yeah, I do recommend going for this dog. If you guys did enjoy this build video, I hope that helped you and you learned something new. And if you did, I would greatly appreciate it if you were to hit that like button and also subscribe. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day, evening, or afternoon. Take care, and I'll see you guys in the next video.